Fahim, huh? I bet you didn't know it, but I'm a tracker.
Hello everyone, I am Raw's host and welcome to one of my first videos in a very long time actually. It's been a long time since I've made any kind of videos. In fact, it's almost been a year. My goodness, well, we're here now friends, we're here now. And we are doing today a review of Starfield, Bethesda's newest game. It has been advertised and marketed to every known person, a known part of the world, and we finally get to play it, my friends. It hit early access just a few days ago, on the 1st of September, and it's due to its full release tomorrow on the 6th of September. Hopefully it's fun, hopefully it's good, and hopefully you guys can learn some fun things about my review. I've been playing it since the 1st of September, and I spent a few days playing it and writing down my points and my overall thoughts of the game so I can give a clear, accurate representation of what I think about it. As the game is very expansive, I didn't want to rush a review, nor did I want to skip any major points or major feelings towards the game itself. But guys, here is Starfield, my friends. It's Bethesda's newest IP for 25 years. They have not done a single IP for a very long time, in fact. It originally announced back in 2018 during Bethesda's E3 presentation, boasting an astonishing 1,000 planets to explore. This splendiferous first and third person sci-fi RPG is set to release on September 6th, like I said before, for the Windows PC and Xbox Series S and X. Sadly, people on the PlayStation will not be able to get their hands on this game. Whether that changes in the future, who's to say? But I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows currently. The setting of the game is you are far into the future of the year 2030, with humankind stretching far across the galaxy, inhabiting hundreds of planets and moons. You become a member of the organization called Constellation, which is a group of space explorers trying to unravel the mysteries of the galaxy. However, 20 years earlier there was a major war with the largest two factions of the game, the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective. So to this day, tension between those factions is still at an all-time high, even with their uneasy peace. You may very well find yourself between these two factions, so the choice you make can make the most significant change across the galaxy. Development started very shortly actually after the release of Fallout 4 back in 2015, so this game has had about roughly 7 to 8 years of development time, which has been quite interesting, because I personally hadn't heard of it until, honestly, it may seem silly, but I actually hadn't heard of it until only about 2 years ago. That may seem a bit odd given the amount of marketing and attention this game has been getting, to say the very least. This game is currently being developed, or was developed I should say rather, in the Creation Engine 2, which is a new iteration of the Creation Engine 1. Which, as we all know, was made for Skyrim, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, all those bangers, if you will, although Fallout 76 left a bit to be desired for, but that is what it is. So in 2021, they did a big, massive work on the Creation Engine and released Creation Engine 2, which is supposed to feature real-time global illumination and advanced volumetric lighting. And after playing the game, you can definitely see where that work has gone into. The lighting is absolutely gorgeous, in my personal opinion. But then again, this is a review, so of course it's going to be my personal opinion. The amount of stuff to do in the game is as broad as what you would expect. Go back to Fallout 4, go back to Skyrim, there was many things to do in those games. Most notably, crafting, role-playing to various types of roles, such as the Dark Brotherhood, or the Thieves Guild, or the Brotherhood of Steel, the Institute, the Minutemen. All those kinds of things they've definitely brought back into this game, which is absolutely wonderful. There is quite a few factions you can actually interact with and join. There is 5 major factions and 7 major factions you can join, potentially, and also interact with, rather doing quests for them, or just killing them, perhaps just interact with them, selling with them. Which gives the game much grander and bigger feel as humanity has stretched across the stars. So all these factions have access to starships and their own merchants and space stations and buildings and cities, which is absolutely amazing. the game. Obviously, you can fight, you can craft, you can explore one of the apparent 1,000 planets this game offers, which is an immense, massive scale on what you can possibly do. You also build giant outposts, which then you can set up employees effectively to work in those outposts. You become a pirate, you can become a soldier, you can become a sheriff, and you have a fully customizable character with background traits that actually affect your gameplay. In my background, I chose the bounty hunter and the wanted traits, as well as the adoring fan. Now, what they do together, the adoring fan, you, well, have an adoring fan. It's quite funny, actually. He just pops in and just, you know, says some really nice things about you, that he joins your crew if you want him to. It's quite cool. The wanted trait means bounty hunters will periodically find me. That's the first clip that you saw at towards the start of me doing battle in space. And that's another thing you can do. You can do battling in space, which is absolutely amazing. As you'd expect with the Bethesda title, there is a lot of choice-driven outcomes to quests and everything. You can choose to persuade people, you can do the sneaky route, you can do the loud and shoot 'em up route, which always leads to a varying experience. So my playthrough is going to be vastly different to most other people's playthroughs. So the game accommodates to what you want to do. Now, there are obviously goods and bads with the game, and some people may say there's too much to explore, some people say it's very cookie cutter, but that's fine. It doesn't need to be everything immensely unique, it just needs to be fun, it just needs to be lived in, needs to feel. One thing I have really been enjoying with the game is the random encounters that you do come across. If you ever played Fallout 4 or Skyrim or some of their previous titles, or Bethesda's previous titles, you will be very familiar with what I mean by a random encounter. One of my favorite random encounters I've come across is... I'll just put the clip here right now. Alright, we're in the Shows sector. Hey, who are you? Unknown ship.
I have a moment of your time.
Sure.
Thanks for responding to my hail. We've been trying to contact you about your ship's extended warranty. Your warranty coverage has expired or is about to expire.
God, I can't even escape the shit in the game. Are you serious?
We think now is a great time to renew your ship's warranty protection plan, or purchase a new one if you lack coverage.
Oh my fucking god. He's... Attack! Easily one of the funniest random encounters I've ever had in any game ever. And on top of all these other things that you can do, you can also build and customize your own ship. You can build a ship from literally nothing to the greatest thing you've ever wanted to build ever, or the most obtuse and offensive thing you could ever want to build, which is quite great. But there are some limitations to what you can build in your ship. For example, you can only have one reactor, and the reactor is what controls the power to your ship, which then powers the various systems such as your engine, your grav drive, which allows you to travel through star systems, your shields, weapons, and so on and so forth. And you can only have one shield system. So you can't really cheese the game and have just infinite power or infinite shields or anything like that. Which makes the game feel more balanced, more realistic in those sorts of aspects. It's an overall well-rounded, balanced experience. Now, I don't want to keep my... I prefer to keep my reviews relatively bite-sized. I don't want this to be like a super-duper long thing. So that's sort of the premise of the game. And I'm just going to go through my pros and cons and my overall thoughts on the game, whether I think, personally, it's worth a buy or it's not worth a buy. So for the pros, many joinable factions with interesting and lengthy quest lines. You can swap between first and third person. You can fully customize and modify your ship. You have the ability to purchase a good variety of ships. And you can also, as I said before, you can build the starships from scratch. You have endless exploration. There are supposed to be 1,000 planets with moons and all these galaxies that you can explore. Planets feel lived and have thriving ecosystems. Nature even reacts to itself. The animals and creatures you come across on these worlds will interact with each other, will potentially fight each other, or they'll graze the land together. I quite like the UI in the Starship and the overall game. I've heard a lot of chatter where people don't like it. I think it's nice, I think it's good, and I am very happy with it. I'm not going to be changing that personally. You don't need to follow the main storyline to truly enjoy and appreciate everything the game has to offer. Sure, it's helpful to follow the main storyline for certain things because it helps you get additional quests, additional items, but you don't need to. Feeling of awe. Whenever you're cruising around the stars and you decide to blow up some asteroids, you know, to get some metal out of them, it just gives you that feeling of, oh my. The FPS combat I found to be very good. At certain times it did feel it didn't have any heft to it, but overall it's very good. The space combat in your ship I think is very fun, very, very good. Can be a bit tricky sometimes to keep on top of the enemy ships, but overall I thought it was quite good, quite fun. Your companions, and at times you can also have multiple companions. So far I've discovered maybe 6-7 companions. They're all very interesting, very fun, have their own likes and dislikes and their own personalities and backstories. Planets feel different to each other. I've currently explored about 25-30 planets as well as quite a few moons. They all feel a bit different. Some of them have very similar biomes, but that's to be expected when you're in the same sort of climate. When you have one moon next to each other, it is expected to have a very similar sort of outcome with each moon. And even space stations. There are space stations which you can check out, you can explore. They could be faction owned, they could be abandoned. All of them have very, very different things. I have found one that was completely controlled by robots and had to kill them all. I found another one where it was a casino heist and there was pirates in there and I had to fight them in 0G. It was one of the funnest things I've ever done, like in terms of a space game. And interesting and funny random encounters. So that, you know, ship insurance is just one example of some of the encounters that I've had in the game, and they're all interesting, they're all fun, they're all enjoyable. Now, a little extra caveat I would like to go back on to where I said everything was sort of unique, but some things were similar. Now, I've heard some people say that some of the assets are being reused here, and there. The buildings are all the same. It's, well, you're in an industrial area, right? And if you've ever been to an industrial area in real life, everything looks the same. You ever been to a housing estate? Everything looks the same. So in this game's context, I think it suits the aesthetic well, and it suits the life aspect of it quite well. Now for the cons. There is no land vehicles or mounts, which I don't like. I want to be able to drive around in a sweet car that I've crafted out of ramshackle parts or stolen from a pirate, because these planets are big, and I don't want to be running on these planets. And as with mounts, there is a lot of, you know, native animals on a lot of these planets. They could be like small insects or massive dinosaur-looking things, or even dodo birds, which I've found before. And you can't mount them. I think that is a shame. That is a very, very big missed opportunity. Minimal tutorials on crucial game systems. There's been a lot of aspects of this game where I had no idea how to do until I googled it, because there's just certain things the game doesn't show you, and it really, really should, or at least it needs to be a bit more in depth on those tutorials. And I know when you play games like Elden Ring and Dark Souls, there isn't much, but there's enough for you to understand the systems in enough detail to complete them well. No minimap. When you're trying to explore and there's no minimap, there's no compass, it's just annoying. Just give me a minimap. But there is a ground map, which is my next con. So when you're on planets, you can open up the ground map, which is supposed to be like a layout of the city or area that you're in. It has almost no information on it, except for where you basically landed your ship and like the next point of interest. If you're in a city, it doesn't show you NPCs, it doesn't show you shops, it doesn't show anything of the nature, which is very annoying, because then you have to run around for the next 5-10 minutes trying to find a weapons merchant so you can sell your guns to him. Outpost building feels almost impossible and extremely daunting early game. They require an obscene amount of resources to get even something small up and running. And oftentimes the resources you need aren't on the planet you're trying to build on. So then you need to you need to do a lot of backtracking, a lot of back and forth to get, if you like this planet, great, but I have to go to these 3 other planets because I need aluminium and I need sealant. It's just, it's annoying is what it is. It's very annoying. And when you have very limited inventory space, there's only so much you can do with that. Certain quest outcomes don't make sense or not discussed at all. There was one quest I did, for example. It was on a big, massive cruise ship in this base. And there was an optional part of that quest to kill a very specific NPC. And if you shot the gun, alarms will go off, you know, you'd ruin the stealth kind of thing, right? And you'd get the sort of like the bad outcome on the quest completion. I killed him in stealth, with a melee weapon, no gunshots were fired, away from guards, in a separate room, and the door was closed, and yet everything still aggroed on me. Because apparently, after reading about it, I had to get that NPC to aggro on me, which in my opinion makes 0 sense. Now, this was actually on my pros list, the endless exploration. The reason I'm putting on the cons list is because it can also feel like you haven't really made any progress. You could visit 100 planets and all these solar systems, but then you've only done 10%. You're like, well, when will this ever end? You'll get that feeling of it's just never-ending fluff is what it can feel like. I'm enjoying the exploration now, but I've only done 30 planets. If I get to 200 planets, I may very well hate the exploration, and that's why it's on the list. You can't fly around the planet, only land. Basically, you're in outer space, you open up the planet map, and you choose the landing spot. That's it. That's the whole flying. When you're on the planet, you then take off. That's it. I feel that's also a very, very big missed opportunity. It would be really cool to fly around in the lower atmosphere of a planet, just seeing what's there. You know, not necessarily having to land everywhere, but just to see what's there. Only human and robot NPCs. There is no aliens. Once again, this is, in my opinion, a huge, huge missed opportunity. We are talking about a game where there is 1,000 explorable planets, but I don't get to find a big green man with a laser gun to fight. I don't like that. I think it's a missed opportunity. There was aliens in Fallout 4, and I'm pretty sure Fallout 3, and New Vegas, and 76. Like, why is there no aliens here? Most quests will require constant jumping between planets, which, as you can imagine, gets very, very annoying. It's just constant fast traveling here, there, everywhere, just to do 3 things. So like a 3-minute quest ends up taking you 10 minutes, and it's just, I don't want to have to do this much traveling just to do this quest. Low inventory. At the early game, you have so little inventory, it's basically like your character has arthritis and has been a chain smoker for 400 years. It is very frustrating, so you actually cannot be the ultimate loot goblin like I love to be. No item deconstruction. So for all those people who have played Fallout, if you were thinking, it'll be fine for Outpost Building because I can deconstruct all my weapons and all the junk, you cannot. You cannot deconstruct anything, which then once again makes the material and resource, farm much harder, much more daunting. You need to complete challenges to level up skills. Now, whenever you level up, you get a perk point. Sometimes you get 2. And that you can put that into persuasion, extra health, whatever you're feeling. But you cannot unlock the second tier of that until you do the challenge from the first tier. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes it's extremely annoying, and it takes a long time. I think that's an extra barrier that didn't need to be there. For example, though, is the persuasion checks. Nice and simple persuasion checks. A persuasion check is an entire conversation with multiple checks. It's not just the one. So you may need to persuade them in that conversation like 6 times. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it takes a minute and it's just a bit frustrating. Inability to craft several important items, or inability to craft several important items unless you beeline it down certain skill trees. You can't craft ammo, which is very frustrating. You can't craft ammo, to the best of my knowledge, and you can't craft meds until you go to the bottom of, almost the bottom, the last skill of the medicine tree. And I don't like that. I don't like having to rely on picking up med packs to use med packs. Your lockpicks, or in the game calls them digipicks, they are stored in the miscellaneous tab where all your junk goes, so it's extremely easy to sell them. They're not stored in any other tab, which I feel is a bit annoying, because you could easily sell them, like I have many times. And you also get low amounts of them. I have found 10 times the amount of lockpickables than lockpicks themselves. And lastly on my cons list, friends, is your companions can ruin stealth. Now that is very annoying, very, very frustrating. You'll be doing a stealth mission perfectly, your companion decides to run out of a room, your stealth's ruined, you have to reload, and it's just like, well, that's not how this should be. They should be stealth too, or they shouldn't be detectable once you're in stealth. But that's my pros and cons list, my friends, so take with that how you will. That's just my thoughts of one person. But my overall thoughts of the game are still extremely positive. I'm having an absolute amazing time playing with the game. I've put in about 26, 28 hours currently, which granted isn't much for a game that you could probably play for about 300 hours quite comfortably. But I feel that is enough to be able to get a good gauge for the game and whether you should keep playing it or not. And if we're doing like a fun to cost ratio, I always do it like the gauge to a movie. $20 to see a movie, the movie goes 2 hours, I have a really good time. So if I can get 10 hours, you know, let's say per $50 spent of a game, or even per $80 of a game, that's a really good deal. That's a really, really good deal. And for the amount of money that you buy this game at, and you get 300 hours, or even get 100 hours or 50 hours, that's still a great deal from the cost to fun ratio. So I think this game, personally, is a 7 out of 10. Now, my rating could be slightly different to other people. 1 is the worst game ever. Alan Wake's American Nightmare was terrible. 5 is just average game. Nothing good, nothing bad. Well, sorry, nothing great, nothing bad. And for me, that was Dying Light 2, you know? And 10 out of 10? Yeah, it's obviously got to be Red Dead Redemption 2 and like The Witcher 3. So I think a 7 is extremely good. It's very well above average. It does its systems quite well. Yes, there are very annoying aspects of the game, and there are things that detract from the score as well. But it also doesn't do anything horribly. And doesn't reimagine and reinvent the wheel, but also didn't need to. Its wheel was nice, and it's pretty polished, all things considered. A few optimization bits and bobs here and there could certainly be better, but I think it's very, very good. And I think this will be the people's new Skyrim. We could easily, like I said, sink hundreds of hours into it. But that's my thoughts, my friends. That is just one man's thoughts on this large and expansive game from my friends at Bethesda. But that's just my thoughts. What did you guys think of the game? Have you guys played it yet? Are you planning on buying the game? Are you not going to play it? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you ever want to hang out sometime, I do stream actually 4 days a week. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for about 20-25 hours in total about a week. All those links will be in the description below. So my friends, thank you all so very much for watching. I really appreciate it and hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day.